All right, so I'm gonna record it. So if you don't want your face on there, make sure you keep that in mind. Um, it's just gonna go on my channel. All right, so the first thing that we're gonna talk about basically is the little pre things that led up to the war happening. We're gonna talk about the next few events. How you doing, Mr. John? Love it. How you doing?
How's it going? I'm
Good,
good, you?
good. We're just getting started here, so you didn't miss
Good,
anything.
good.
So, just to let you know, this session is being recorded. So if you want to turn your camera off for any reason, you can go ahead and do that. If not, that's cool too. Just let you know. It
Yeah,
is
no
on
worries.
the YouTube channel. Okay, so the first thing we're going to start with is the last few events that led up to the Revolutionary War. So we can kind of understand what the conflict was about. So we can understand the nature of this relationship between the United States and the Kingdom of Great Britain, right? So we're going to talk about the tea tax, the Boston Tea Party. I'm assuming y'all kind of know something about the Boston Tea Party. Right? So we know that the and the king, and his royalties, they had some disputes about the taxation, right? There's a few taxes that were happening that the colonists felt were unfair. They were too high. You're raising them without any kind of assembly approval, yada yada yada. So let me show y'all real quick. Let me share my screen. Sorry. Okay, how do I do that? It's usually on here. Oh, there it is. All right, can y'all see that?
Oh,
You guys can see the
there we go.
screen? Britannica,
See.
okay. All right, so I'll just make sure I pull my sources so everybody knows I'm not just talking outside my ass. I'm sure everybody knows about this situation, but whatever. Um, right, so the Americans were protesting both attacks on tea, taxation without representation, right? So there's nothing you're really giving us, right? We're just purchasing tea from you and you're taxing us. So what service are we kind of being taxed for, right? So taxation without representation and the perceived monopoly of the East India Company. So perceived by companies that are owned by so something else. But anyway, that's that. So they were having some in 1773, an incident in which 342 chests of tea belonging to the British East India Company were thrown from ships into Boston Harbor by American patriots disguised as Mohawk Indians. They were protesting a tax on tea, tax without representation, right? So this is one of the core issues that started the Revolutionary War, right? Taxation. Another one was religious freedom, right? Taxation and religious freedom. Um, so post Revolutionary War, right? The United States claims that they won the Revolutionary War. What does the word win mean to most people? The word win means to most people that I was victorious, that I overcome, that I by somehow my force or my charm or my wit, I forced you to comply with my will, right? Well, I wouldn't say we won. I would say that the war ended and that there were terms upon which the war was ended. But this idea that the United States had the upper hand is not necessarily true, right? So a treaty, like a constitution, is a contract. A treaty is a contract upon which the terms upon which a war ends or a conflict ends, right? So the treaty says, I will do this and you will do that, and therefore the war will cease. Okay. But there were people who felt that the Kingdom of Great Britain was taking pity on the colonists. At the end of the day, you have to realize that the 13 colonies was a very small amount of territory. The Kingdom of Great Britain was vast, large, rich already, right? So the idea that we kind of overpowered them is quite silly, to be frank, right? So following the war, there were debts. There were debts that were owed by American merchants, so basically store owners, to banks in Britain. All right. So not only am I a bigger, stronger country than you, but you owe me money on top of that. So why on earth would I just let you go? Do things like that happen in the real world, yo? Not so much, right? So during the American Revolution, a cash-strapped Continental Congress accepted loans from France, paying off these and other debts incurred during the Revolution, proved one of the major challenges of the post-independence period. The new U.S. government attempted to pay off these debts in a timely manner, but the debts were at times a source of diplomatic tension. Okay, in order to pay for significant expenditures during the revolution, Congress had two options: print more money or obtain loans to meet the budget deficit. Okay, so the United States owed money to Britain because you have to think the 13 colonies were established under British rule, under his charter, with his money, with his credit, with his ships. Okay, so obviously there are commercial transactions. There are banks in Britain that are funding the colonies, and there is still a debt owed. Then on top of that, in order to even engage in this conflict with them, they have to borrow money from other nations, France being one of them. Okay, give me a second, y'all. Somebody is asking me where the link for the video is. Okay. All right. So there's going to be a resolution here, but this debt has to be satisfied. Right. So does anybody know what, do any of y'all know what the word constitutor means? You know what constitutor means?
No. Okay.
Okay. Let's see. They want to be funny today. Okay, well, we'll go to the AI description, I guess. All right, so this definition reflects the civil concept of a constitutor, which is distinct from the common law notion of a surety. In civil law systems, a constitutor is not necessarily a guarantor in the sense of a common law surety. They are someone who, through a direct agreement, takes on the obligation to pay a debt that belongs to another person. A constitutor is one who takes on the debt of another. Right? That's what a constitutor is. Similar to a surety, similar to, think an insurance contract, right? So if you get in an accident, your insurance company is going to pay for that. Think of a bail bondsman, right? You can't pay $100,000, but the bail bondsman can, right? So he's going to pay for that. Think of a cosigner on a car loan, right? A constitutor. I don't know why I feel like they're hiding the online Black's Law Dictionary today, but we'll deal with that in a second. Sharing both these pages. Okay, let's not do that. I don't mean to confuse. All right. So the Constitution, like I said, is a contract. What is a contract? A contract is an agreement between two or more parties to do something. All right. An agreement upon sufficient consideration to do something. All right. So we, the people, right? That's a group of people. That's one group, right? I said two or more parties. So two or more groups. We, the people, in order to establish justice, secure the domestic tranquility, yada, yada, yada. Do hereby establish these articles, right? So we, the people, are giving the government the authority to do something. So the Constitution is a contract. Now, there are several different types of contracts. There are employment contracts, there are assignment contracts, there are loan contracts, there are surety contracts, there are bailment contracts, there are a million other different types of contracts, right? There are trust contracts, right? So what is a trust exactly? A trust is an arrangement in which there is a grantor who owns a property and he puts it in the custody of another for the benefit of a third party, right? So if your mom left you a trust fund, she had the money, she had $1 billion, right? She put it in the custody of your uncle for the kid, right? That's a trust relationship, right? So if we, the people, give the government this authority for the benefit of the society as a whole, that's a trust relationship. Right? So the Constitution is a contract that establishes a trust relationship. That's what this entity is. They're talking about your straw man. Right? Now, the Public Funding Act of 1790. Let's talk about the Public Funding Act of 1790. So basically, there's a war between Britain and the United States. The United States still owes Britain money, or the colonies, right? The colonies still owes them money. They owe money to a bunch of other people, right? And some sort of arrangement has to be come to in order to settle this debt, right? So let's look at the treaty for a second. I forgot I was going to show you all the treaty. And the arrangement that is come to is that there is going to be a constitution in the United States. And a constitution means that somebody is standing as a surety for another's debt, right? So the United States government, the corporate body, stood as the surety for the debt of the several states. The several colonies became the several states, right? So the United States federal government as a body, the entity, stood as the surety for the debt of the several states. That's why we have a constitution. Okay. You guys see this? It says you can't. Okay, yeah. Now we can see it. So this is the Treaty of Paris, 1783. This is the also known as the Paris Peace Treaty. This is the treaty that ended the war between the colonies and Britain. Okay. So as much as I don't want to, I'm going to take the time to read this real quick because this is a very important document. If you call yourself an independent nation and this is the document that established your independence, you should probably know what it says because you have no idea what's going on. All right. Stick with me, y'all. I promise at the end of this, you're going to have a much better understanding than most people of what's really going on out here. All right. In the name of the most holy and undivided Trinity, it having pleased the divine providence to dispose of the hearts of the most serene and most potent Prince George III by the grace of God, King of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, defender of the faith, Duke of Brunswick and Lauenburg, arch-treasurer and parent-elector of the Holy Roman Empire, etc., and of the United States of America. Stop right there. Prince George III, by the grace of God, King of Great Britain, France, and Ireland, defender of the faith, Duke of Brunswick and Lauenburg, arch-treasurer and prince-elector of the Holy Roman Empire and of the United States, prince-elector of the United States. All right. So there is a consistent and constant relationship between this nation and that one. And that's what y'all have to understand. This document says right here that Prince George III is the prince-elector of the United States of America. To forget all past misunderstandings and differences that have unhappily interrupted the good correspondence and friendship which they mutually wish to restore, and to establish such beneficial and satisfactory intercourse between the two countries upon the ground of reciprocal advantages. You see how there's a relationship here, a symbiotic relationship, right? A transactional relationship, perhaps. Upon the grounds of reciprocal advantages and mutual convenience, as may promote and secure both the perpetual peace and harmony, and having for this desirable end already laid the foundation of peace and reconciliation by the provisional articles signed at Paris on the 30th of November, 1782, by the commissioners empowered on each part, which articles were agreed to be inserted in and constitute the treaty of peace proposed to be concluded between the Crown of Great Britain and the said United States, but which treaty was not concluded until terms of peace should be agreed upon between Great Britain and France, and His Britannic Majesty should be ready to conclude such treaty accordingly. And the treaty between Great Britain and France having since been concluded, His Britannic Majesty and the United States of America, in order to carry into full effect the provisional articles mentioned above, according to the tender thereof, had constituted and appointed, that is to say, His Britannic Majesty on his part, David Hartley, Esquire, member of the Parliament of Great Britain, and the said United States, on their part, John Adams, Esquire, a late commissioner of the United States of America at the Court of Versailles, right? So you have to understand that while the colonies existed, there was, right, that they were one body, right? So now we're determining the terms upon which this body is good. These two bodies are going to be split. Late delegate in Congress from the state of Massachusetts and Chief Justice of the said state and Minister Plenipotentiary of the said United States, to their high mightiness, the States General of the United Netherlands, Benjamin Franklin, Esquire. Late delegate in Congress from the state of Pennsylvania, President of the Convention of said state and Minister Plenipotentiary from the United States of America at the Court of Versailles, John J. Esquire. Late President of Congress and Chief Justice of the State of New York and Minister Plenipotentiary from the said United States at the Court of Madrid, to be plenipotentiaries for the concluding and signing the present definitive treaty, who, after having reciprocally communicated the respective full powers, having agreed upon and confirmed the following articles. All right, so blah, 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 blah. But This is basically just the introduction to the treaty. Article 1, His Britannic Majesty acknowledges the said United States to whiz. That word, however you pronounce that, it means, for example, right, or a namely, right? Basically, this is what I'm talking about. His Britannic Majesty acknowledges the said United States, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Providence Plantations, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, et cetera, to be sovereign and independent states. And he treats them as such, right? So the Declaration of Sovereignty. Article 2 goes to talk about which all disputes might arise in future on the subject of the boundaries of the said United States may be prevented, is hereby agreed and declared that the following are and shall be their boundaries. So we're talking about land boundaries, right? So all the provisions of what are we fighting over? We're fighting over territory, we're fighting over taxation, we're fighting over, right? So they're going to cover article. It's like little paragraphs, summaries, right? Every little thing that they have to cover. So we're going to skip a little bit down. Article 3. It is agreed that the people of the United States shall continue to enjoy unmolested the right to fish, right? So think of rights like this, not just land rights, fishing rights, water rights. All this stuff has to be decided upon, right? Article 4. It is agreed that the creditors on either side, what does that mean? It is agreed that the creditors on either side shall meet with no lawful impediment to the recovery of the full value in sterling money of all bona fide debts heretofore contracted, right? So this is a major provision of this treaty. This is what we have to understand when we're dealing with commercial law, right? It is agreed that the creditors on either side shall meet with no lawful impediment, right? So when you're dealing with that straw man account, you are dealing with an entity that has pledged its allegiance, right? To pledge means to promise to pay. Pledge is a financial term. It's also a financial action, but we also know it in the sense of to pledge your allegiance, right? Well, what is your allegiance financially? If you just think of allegiance financially, then you can apply that to a financial account. You have pledged your allegiance to the United States, right? So when you got a birth certificate, you were signed up for the Public Revenue Act. You were signed up for the Public Funding Act. You were signed up as a subscriber to the federal debt. The Public Funding Act that was established in 1790 as a program to raise revenue to repay these debts that were heretofore contracted to, right? So this is what they're talking about. If you've ever heard anybody say about how you can't deny jurisdiction or commercial dishonor, this is what they're talking about when they talk about commercial dishonor. So this is one of the big things that's getting y'all is y'all are acting in commercial dishonor by trying to deny them jurisdiction under administrative law because you've been told that administrative law is not real, which is not true, or it's not applicable to you, which is also not true. Administrative law is applicable to certain entities, right? Different entities have different rules. That's how that works. So it is agreed that the creditors shall meet with no lawful impediment, right? So this is where they talk about commercial dishonor. So you want to stay in honor. You don't want to deny them jurisdiction. What you want to do is you want to pay with your credit, with your Social Security account with an unlimited amount of millions of dollars in it that they keep talking about, that's not quite how that works either, right? It's an unlimited amount of credit, not an unlimited amount of dollars. They are distinctly different, but we'll get into that later, right? So that's one of the big things y'all are misunderstanding is you're acting in commercial dishonor because you're not crediting. It is agreed. Listen, these are the terms upon which the war stopped, right? You will pay the debt. right? So this is not something to be played with. Article 5. It is agreed that Congress shall earnestly recommend it to the legislatures of the respective states to provide for the restitution of all estates, rights, and properties which have been confiscated belonging to real British subjects, and also of the estates, rights, and properties of persons resident in the districts in possession of His Majesty's arms. So basically, all the loyalists, all the people who stayed loyal to the crown and didn't turn against the crown and try to declare independence under the United States, you have to leave them alone. You have to restore their estates, their rights, their properties. No more, you know what I mean? When wars break out, people are taken as prisoner, right? So their rights might have been taken, their property might have been taken, right? So you have to restore all those rights. So these are the terms of the peace resolution, right? So think of it that way. So as to render the said laws or acts perfectly consistent, not only with justice and equity, but with the spirit of conciliation, right? So basically, hey, this beef is dead, and you're gonna let it go. Article 6, there shall be no future confiscations nor any prosecutions commenced against any person, right? By reason or the part of that he or she may have taken, or he or they may have taken in the present war, and that no person shall on account suffer any future loss or damage. So we're forgiving all debts. You can't war against us. You can't punish us for being loyalists or being on the other side, right? Everything's dead. Everything's dead. There shall be a firm and perpetual peace between His Britannic Majesty and the said states, and between the subjects of one and the citizens of the other. Wherefore all hostilities, both by sea and land, shall from henceforth cease. All prisoners on both sides shall be set at liberty, and His Britannic Majesty shall, with all convenient speed and without causing any destruction or carrying away of any Negroes or any other property of the American inhabitants, withdraw all his armies, garrisons, and fleets from the said United States, and from every place, harbor. Ooh, that's a lot. All right, so just again, drawing out the terms of the ending of the war, carrying away of any property, Negro, which is crazy, right? So a lot of times you'll see a lot of the reality of the mentality that was present in this country when you read this stuff, but that's relevant to some people's lives, right? Article 8, the navigation of the river Mississippi. Article 9, in case it should so happen any place or territory belonging to Great Britain or to the United States should have been conquered by the arms of either from the other before the arrival of the said provisional articles in America, it is agreed that the same shall be restored without difficulty and without requiring any compensation, right? So basically, no smoke. It's no smoke. This is a complete ceasefire, right? The solemn ratifications of the present treaty, expedited in good and due form, shall be exchanged between the contracting parties. Contracting, right? Everything is a contract. Between the contracting parties in the space of 6 months or sooner, if possible, to be computed from the day of the signatures of the present treaty. A witness whereof, and here are the signatures, right? So that's important for you to understand what it says. So basically, most of it is just a bunch of nonsense. Yes, we understand there's land rights that have to be discussed, jurisdictional territories that have to be discussed. But what I really want you to pay attention to is Article 4. Okay. A constitutor is one who stands as the surety for the debt of another. The federal government stood as the surety and guaranteed repayment to Great Britain on behalf of the states and the merchants and that still owe these debts to Great Britain, to France, to all these other creditors. It is agreed that the creditors on either side shall meet with no lawful impediment, right? So paying this debt, so-called debt that we keep accruing because we keep borrowing money instead of printing our own, is a provision of the contract that ended the war. So we have to understand the significance of that is that if we do not keep this contract, the terms of this contract, the war can be restarted. And that's what's basically happening to you when you're denying them administrative jurisdiction. You're trying to challenge jurisdiction. You're being dishonorable. You're refusing to credit, and you're triggering maritime commercial warfare jurisdiction against yourself. Right? All right. So you need to know that. Okay. So let's move on to the Public Funding Act. Stay with me, y'all. Stay with me, y'all. Oh, that's the same page. So I feel like that's unnecessary. Right, is that sharing the page? What are we looking at? No, it's not sharing the page. Okay. So let's share this. So the Public Funding Act of 1790, also known as the Compromise of 1790, the Debt Assumption Act of 1790, right? This is what we're talking about. So we're going to watch a quick video on this, and then I'm going to pull up the PDF and go over that. So basically, this is the first law that establishes what we know as taxation, right? Which is the government applying a levy or a fee against the citizen for some kind of cause, right? So because of this debt that is owed, there has to be a program that is going to that is designed to raise money, raise funds to repay this debt. This is essentially what taxation is. It is a program that is designed to raise revenue to repay the public debt. That's what taxation is.
In 1790, Secretary of the Treasury Alexander Hamilton proposed assuming the debts of the states in order to create an overarching national debt. When he did so, uproar ensued. But why was this subject so controversial? And how did it lead the United States Capitol to end up in Washington, D.C.? In this video, I'll explain. Early in President George Washington's first term, Alexander Hamilton proposed a program that championed economic centralization under a British-oriented mercantilist system. One element of his platform called for the general government to take on the huge debt the states had accrued during the War for Independence. Hamilton hoped the debt assumption plan would yield three overarching outcomes. First, that the national debt would establish public credit, raising the economic credibility of the United States on the world stage. Second, that the debt would necessarily connect wealthy investors to the health of the general government, increasing political stability. Third, that the plan would make the states subordinate to the central authority and allow the general government to have more control over economic policy. Hamilton made his case in the first report on public credit in 1790, then lobbied Congress to support it. Meanwhile, Secretary of State Thomas Jefferson and Congressman James Madison opposed the plan, arguing that it violated the Constitution because there was no enumerated power to assume the debts of the states. Furthermore, some states had already paid back most of the debts they accrued. Jefferson and Madison also perceived the Hamiltonian Assumption Plan as a scheme to siphon political and economic power away from the individual states. I am of the opinion also that the measure is not politic, Madison declared, because if the public debt is a public evil, an assumption of the state debts will enormously increase and perhaps perpetuate it. Moreover, Madison recalled that the Nationalists at the Philadelphia Convention, including himself and Hamilton, agreed to defeat a proposal to add a power to assume the debts of the states, believing its inclusion would appear too controversial and jeopardize the framework's adoption. The convention did so on August 22, 1787, and Hamilton admitted the removal was deliberate in a 1792 letter. I well remember, Hamilton wrote, that both he and Madison agreed that a debt assumption power would create the impolicy of multiplying obstacles to the Constitution's reception on collateral details. At the same time as the debate on debt assumption raged on, another congressional dispute emerged over the future location of the United States Capitol. While the general government first took office in New York, the Constitution permitted Congress to establish the location for the seat of government. The Southern representatives naturally favored a location in the South, while those from the North pushed for the capital to be located in a northern metropolis. One day, outside of President Washington's New York residence, a somber Hamilton expressed to Jefferson his disdain regarding the inability to sway Congress to his position on debt assumption. According to Jefferson, Hamilton even went as far as to suggest that he would resign as Treasury Secretary if he failed to persuade Congress to assume the state debts. This event spurred Jefferson to call a dinner party to join Hamilton with Madison, who was then the most ardent congressional opponent of the Assumption Plan. On the occasion, Madison and Hamilton struck a bargain that would satisfy some of what they both wanted. Under the arrangement, Southern delegates would be asked to accept Hamilton's Assumption Plan, allowing for a holistic central debt to be managed by the general government. Virginia would also receive lucrative financial compensation in return for the assumption of its debt. Additionally, Philadelphia would serve as the temporary capital for 10 years, after which point a new capital would be established somewhere along the Potomac River, near the border of Virginia and Maryland. The dinner table bargain, or Compromise of 1790, was a pivotal negotiation in the earliest stages of the young republic. True to the agreement, Madison helped persuade Southern representatives to support the Assumption Plan. In like fashion, Hamilton rallied his Northern counterparts to agree to place the capital in the Southern site. In the summer of 1790, Congress narrowly passed the Residence Act and the Assumption Act, and President Washington signed both bills into law. The Assumption Act was especially provocative, and skeptics took notice. For example, Virginia's General Assembly explicitly condemned the debt assumption plan. According to the state, the plan was not warranted by the Constitution of the United States and would prove fatal to the existence of American liberty. The resolution also chastised the plan as reminiscent of kingly tyranny, warning it would produce enormous debt and unbounded influence in the hands of the executive. Virginia's harsh rejoinder called for Congress to repeal the Assumption Act and articulated that the state would use its power to protect Virginia against federal encroachments. In the end, Jefferson considered the dinner table bargain to be a tragic mistake. As he put it, "Of all the errors of my political life, this has occasioned me the deepest regret. Hamilton's system flowed from principles adverse to liberty and was calculated to undermine and demolish the republic." Furthermore, Madison was drawn away from his nationalist inclinations after the Assumption Act and helped found the Republican Party to oppose the Federalists. Of all the acts of the First Congress, the Assumption Act and the Residence Act may have had the most long-lasting repercussions. The United States remains a country of foreign credit and immense public debt, and the capital has remained in Washington, D.C. for over 200 years. A true measure of compromise in a divisive era, the dinner table bargain left an enormous impression upon the future of the United States. In my book,
Okay, so what are they talking about? Let's talk about what they're talking about. Why do I not have this here? That's okay. Public Funding Act of 1790. So the government establishes a program which they can use to raise money to pay federal debts, right? So this is essentially the first law that establishes taxation, revenue law, right? Starts here. Okay. So basically what they did was that it's a voluntary system. It says right here in the bill, we're going to read it, that it's voluntary, right? There is money appropriated by the federal government to the states to administer this program, right? And what it's doing is it's raising money to repay the federal debts, right? So this is the foundation of taxation, right? So we're going to skim through this just a little bit, but I just want to show y'all all the sources, right? So this is the Public Funding Act of 1790. Whereas justice and the support of the public credit require that provision should be made for fulfilling the engagements of the United States, so paying these people back. In respect to their foreign debt, right? So debt owed to foreign places, right? And for funding their domestic debt upon equitable and satisfactory terms. Be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America and Congress assembled, that reserving out of the monies which have arisen since the last December of the last past, of which shall hereinafter arise from the duties on goods and wares and blah, 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 blah. That's a lot. Okay, let's get into something interesting. As new loans are and will be necessary for the payment of aforesaid arrears of interest and the installments of the principal of the said foreign debt due and growing due. Okay, pay attention to this. Be it further enacted that the President of the United States be and is hereby authorized to cause to be borrowed on behalf of the United States a sum or sums not exceeding in the whole $12 million, and that so much of this sum may be necessary to the discharge of said arrears and installments. And if it can be effected upon terms advantageous to the United States, to the paying of the whole of the said foreign debt, right? So the United States is allowed to borrow money on behalf of the United States, right? The President of the United States can borrow money on behalf of the U.S., not exceeding $12 million. And so much that this sum of money may be necessary to discharge the said arrears and installments, right? So this is raising money to put up installments and arrears, whatever this word mean. I would assume they're using this in a noun sense, like to mean a building, an installment, some sort of, right, commissary. If it can be affected upon terms advantageous to the United States, the paying of the whole said foreign debt be appropriated solely to these purposes. So we're creating money. We're taking loans to create money to fund installments, right? To fund the domestic and foreign debt that we talked about that we were left with after the war, right? Okay. Look at section 3. Be it therefore further enacted. I know this is hard to keep up with, y'all. Keep up with me. That a loan to the full amount of the said domestic debt be and the same is hereby proposed. And that books for receiving subscriptions to the said loan, right? So taxation is a loan, right? It's a loan you're giving to the government, right? So the commissioner receives the subscriptions, the tax commissioner. Let's go to Black's Law. What does subscription mean? Like, is there no like an online free version anymore? That's not a thing. It used to be everywhere. That's crazy. All right. To subscribe means to underwrite, to sign something, right? In a physical manner, it means to sign. In U.S. law, subscription is a formal agreement. What do you do with an agreement, a contract? You sign it, right? To subscribe. In U.S. law, subscription is a formal agreement in which a person, the subscriber, commits to making a payment or providing something of value in exchange for specific services or public benefits or property. A formal agreement in which a person commits to making a payment or providing something of value. Right? So when you subscribe, right? So basically, the federal government assumed the debts of the state. So they said, we're going to take control. We're going to take control of your bank accounts. Basically, if I'm going to assume your debts, I'm going to pay your bills. I'm going to assume your debts, right? So as we watched in the video, this gave the federal government an immense amount of control, right? That some people felt would be the end of liberty eventually. Okay, so I want you to check this out. Books for receiving subscriptions to the said loan be opened at the Treasury of the United States by a commissioner to be appointed in each of the said states. right? Commissioners, insurance commission, right? Tax commissioners. What is a commissioner, right? To be appointed in each of the said states on the first day of October next, to continue open until the last day of September following, inclusively, that the sums which shall be subscribed thereto be payable in certificates issued. So you're going to subscribe to the loan, and certificates shall be issued for the debt. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what your birth certificate is. It's a certificate that proves that you own a share of the public debt. According to their specie value and computing the interest and blah, 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 blah. Those issued by the Register of the Treasury, those issued by the Commissioner of Loans in the several states. The Commissioners of Loans in the several states, including certificates given pursuant to an act of Congress of the 2nd of January. Right. Let me make sure there's not anything else right here. I want to show y'all real quick. Section 4, to be further enacted that for the whole or any part of any sum subscribed to the said loan by any person or persons or body politic, which shall be paid in the principal of the said domestic debt, the subscriber or subscribers shall be entitled to a certificate. This is why you have a birth certificate, right? This is why you have everything is a certificate, right? Your social security card is a certificate, it's a trust certificate, right? You go to the store, you buy something, you get a receipt. Your receipt is a certificate of deposit, right? So in commerce, everything is certificates. Subscribers shall be entitled to a certificate purporting to that the United States owes to the holder, like the holder in due course, how they talk about I'm the holder in due course. That certificate purports to the United States owes to the holder or holders thereof, his, her, or their signs, a sum to be expressed therein. Payable quarterly, redempted by payments not exceeding blase, 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 right? So this is the bedrock foundation of the entire financial system in the United States is deposits, loans, and certificates. This is the tax code, y'all. To enter into the books to be held by him for that purpose, credits to the respective subscribers, credits, right? Credits. So this credit, this unlimited credit that they're referring to, right? This is credit. So you can draw credits off your name, right? And further that the stock, which shall be created pursuant to this act, shall be transferable only on the books of the Treasury. Why do you think when you move to a new state, you have to go get a new identification card, a new driver's license? What's the first thing you have to take down there? Your birth certificate. Your birth certificate is stock. It represents an account. Your social security card is holding that social security account is holding that stock, right? So when you move to a different state, they have to transfer the books. They have to transfer that stock from the books in California to the books in Georgia, from the books in Delaware to the books in Tennessee, right? Shall be transferable only on the books of the Treasury or of the said commissioners respectively, which upon the credit for the same shall exist at the time of the transfer, or proprietors or his, her, or their attorney, but it should be lawful for the Secretary of the Treasurer by special warrant under his hand and seal, countersigned by the comptroller and registered by the register, to transfer the stock from one commissioner to those of another commissioner, blah, blah, blah. So that's the foundation of the tax code, right? Public Funding Act. So let's go back real quick. Watch the whole thing again, but just a little second.
British acknowledged each state as an independent country. In this video, I'll explain.
So yes, the states are independent to each other. The United States is one nation as a whole, but the states are sovereign to each other. They are not sovereign from the United States. That is not true. If you've been taught that, that's not true. But they are sovereign to each other, meaning that Texas can have different law than California and vice versa. And they do not have to agree on, their laws, everything the same. Now, things that are mandated by the union are mandated by the union, but everything that the federal government does not mandate is left up to the states.
In 1778, the newly formed United States and France entered into an alliance that helped turn the tides in the war against Great Britain. At first concerned with the suppression of a regional rise, diminish the effectiveness of British blockades, encouraged Spain to enter the war on the American side. British General Charles Cornwallis's entire army was. Meanwhile, the American states maintained the official position that complete independence was the minimum demand for making peace with Britain.
Okay, so I'm not going to go over that again. I don't really understand what the point I was looking for there was. I'm just going to keep moving on. That's the Public Funding Act, right? So when the federal government assumes the debts of the states, I want y'all to think about how this affects jurisdiction. Jurisdiction, right? So what's happening here is kind of I don't want to get into that because that's down the line. I want you to think about how that affects jurisdiction. So if the states are now being managed by the federal government, the federal government is managing their money, right? I'm going to pay your debt. I'm going to take care of your debt. Doesn't that now mean that the states are in some way, shape, or form indebted to the federal government? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly what that means. So in some way, shape, or form, this has affected their jurisdiction, right? So the word jurisdiction really just means scope, right? What is within my control, right? You could say your mom has jurisdiction in your house, over your house, right? As the parent. You could say, I remember when I was in college, I took an EMT class, right? So there are two different levels of EMT. There's EMT basic, there's EMT intermediary, and then you have paramedic, right? So all of those certifications come with a different, I forget what they call it. It's like a certain level of care that you're legally allowed to give, right? So like in a company, you might call this, like in a military, they might call this a rank. You might call it a title. You might call it a, right? But it's a certain level of authority, right? So all jurisdiction means, right? The official power to make legal decisions and judgments pertaining to something, right? So jurisdiction is basically, I have been granted the permission to have an interest in this. That's what jurisdiction means. I have been granted the permission to have an interest for this. How is it like I can't find no Black's Law today? Like, this is crazy. All right, but y'all, you guys see this this definition here, right? So jurisdiction defines the powers of the courts to inquire into facts, apply the law, make decisions, and declare judgment. Jurisdiction essentially means an interest. I for some reason have an interest in this, right? So when you create a law in which the federal government is going to be financially responsible for the debt of all 50 states, well, now you've given the federal government a reason to have an interest. Right? So you've expanded their jurisdiction. So you're going to see they're doing a lot of jurisdiction expanding things for the next, the next couple laws we're going to talk about. And this is done on purpose, of course, to gain more control. Right? So that's the bedrock of taxation is the Public Funding Act. All right. So then we're going to talk about other funding acts. So we have the Revenue Act of 1861. This is the first real law they come up with where they mandate a federal income tax in the United States to fund the Civil War, right? So again, this is another tax that they're using to fund the public debt. What does it mean to even fund debt? What do they mean by that, right? That's confusing in itself. But basically, when they tax you, because they can guarantee your taxes because you are mandated to pay them, they are guaranteed funds, right? So if I owe Britain money, I'm in debt to them, and I can tax John Doe for it, then John Doe can fund my debt to Britain. So it's weird how they use these terms of fund debt, but once you start to understand that debt is money, right? There's no real value in these notes, right? Debt, a debt contract, when you flip it on the other side, it's debt on one side, but it's money on the other, right? Because if you think about it, this is the natural element of everything. Everything is both an asset and a liability, right? If you have a car, that's an asset. It's something that you can use to get places. You can sell it if you needed money quick, blase, 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 whatever. It's also a liability. If it breaks down, you got to pay for it. If it gets an accident, you got to pay for it, right? So debt is money. And when you understand that, you'll understand what it means to fund debt. But I know it's getting a little confusing, so I'm going to move on. All right. Then we have another act that they use to expand jurisdiction. This is one I want y'all to really pay attention to. This is a big one, but the main one you're going to be dealing with when you deal with them, when you have to go to court, when they say prove it, is what happened in 1933. We got the Federal Reserve Act, the Municipal Banking Act, and the Securities and Exchange Act. But they did make several leaps forward here, right? So the Shepherd-Towner Act, officially titled the Promotion of Welfare and Hygiene Act, Maternity and Infancy Act, was signed into law by President Warren G. Harding on November 23rd. Blase, blase, blase. Let's get into what it's about. The act provided federal funds to states to establish programs promoting prenatal care, infant welfare, and maternal health education, right? So there were grants that were granted to the states by the federal government. Grant means money. Grant means money. I grant, assign, convey, right? To give a grant means to give interest, future. Basically, they're giving you interest in shares. Like when the government gives you benefits, they're giving you interest in shares. That's why you can spend them on food and not on anything else, because it's not money. It's private credit that's ran through a corporation called SNAP. It's not Federal Reserve banking credit. It's private company credit. Like when you go to Target and they say, well, you can't have a refund, but you can have store credit, right? That's what your food stamps are. It's store credit from the company called the Department of Health and Human Services, right? So let me get back here. They established programs to help mothers. So mothers who were poor, who didn't have welfare, okay? If we're going to give you maternal services when you have your child, we're going to give you this, we're going to give you this, okay? The service of just printing and recording the birth, right? The birth certificate. So the federal government granted money to the states to pay them for the process of registering births and to give prenatal care and birthing care to infants and to mothers, right? So this is where the situation becomes transactional. Right at your very fucking birth. Now, this law was eventually repealed, but it was essentially replaced with the Social Security Act. All right, so this is where it's going to get interesting. Here is my, oh yeah, it's right here. So I'm going to show y'all. This is a copy of my birth certificate. This is an old one. I don't even have the physical of this anymore, but I have several pictures of it that are never going away. So we're gonna look at this, right? So this is really old, but anyway, here's, all my information, name, date of birth, where I was born. This is my mother's name down here. My mother's name is Patricia,
It's
right?
not showing nothing. I don't see it.
I was not showing anything.
No.
Thank you for letting me know that. Oh, I see. So, right. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So my mother's name is Patricia, right? So down here, this is what I want to draw your attention to, right? So like I said, these grants, a grant, did you know a grant is income, right? Don't you have to file, don't you have to report grant money on your tax return? You guys ever had to do that, report grant money on your tax return, right? So grant money is income. Grants are generally considered taxable income, right? So how can you say, well, how could something you gave to me for free, what is that? What does income even mean, right? So a grant is income. So the federal government under the Shepard-Towner Act, right, they established grants that the federal government granted money to the states to grant money to you. So when you went in and your mother was poor, was presumed to be poor, whatever, and she needed health care, right? They're granting you, first of all, the service of recording your birth. They're granting you maternal and infancy care, right? This is a monetized grant, folks. Right from your very birth, right? This grant, imagine like when you get a grant for FAFSA. The school doesn't, some schools, when you get scholarships, they don't even let you hold it. They send it directly to the school and they assign like a fiduciary, a trustee. Like with Social Security, older folks on Social Security a lot of times have a payee, right? Sometimes if they're not mentally competent, they got dementia, Alzheimer's, something like that, right? So what you have to understand is when they grant you something, that is commercial property. That resource, that resource that they're giving you is a monetized resource, right? So you're receiving interest in the federal debt. You're being granted, right? So it's like when you go to a nonprofit, did you know if you're a participant in a nonprofit, you are a beneficiary of that organization? That's why you get food when you go there. If you go to a soup kitchen or something like that, right? Stuff like that, you're a beneficiary of that. That's why you can go and sign up and get services. And when they assign all that stuff away, right? And then they go back doors with IRS and they tell IRS, hey, we gave $20 worth to John Doe and we gave 25 to Jane and we gave, about $40 worth of sandwiches to Todd over there, right? So you think nothing's happening, but you're receiving a monetized benefit from a contractual financial agreement on the day you're born. So you see this down here says county custodian. Custodian, what's a custodian? Y'all kind of have an idea of what a custodian is, right? Someone who takes care of someone who can't take care of themselves. You could call it a parent, a guardian, a custodian, right? A social worker, think like any type of custodial, fiduciary type of relationship, right? A lot of different things could be a custodian, right? So I want y'all to check this out. Y'all can see up here, I was born in Georgia. That's what this says, State of Georgia, Certificate of Live Birth, right? You can see the custodian's name. If I blow it up for you, you can see it clear as day. It says Nancy K. Aspinwall, right? Nancy K. Aspinwall. Let's show y'all who Nancy K. Aspinwall is. I'm going to type in the county, which is Hinesville. Like I said, State of Georgia, right? Nancy K. Aspinwall. Didn't we just see that name? Who is Nancy K. Aspinwall? She is a probate judge. Well, what does custodian mean? What is this
Caretaker.
custodian?
Like a caretaker.
Like a what? Yeah, like caretaker, right? So this lady, I'm 33 years old almost. This lady is still the head judge in Liberty County. My bad. That's where my mama lived. I was born in Hinesville County, but my mama lived in Liberty County. This lady is still the head judge in Liberty County, Georgia, to this day. Right? So under the Shepherd-Towner Act, they're granting you these benefits. You're receiving these benefits. These benefits are being assigned to an account that is being held with Social Security. All right. So that's what's going on with that. And the reason you have a custodian is because you're a minor, and minors cannot own commercial property. This benefit is a commercialized, monetized account. That's why you need a custodian, right? So let's check this out real quick. Grants to minors. UTMA. So the first thing you have to understand any of this is you have to understand a body of law called probate. And probate is the law of custody. Custody of entities. Who's in charge? Trusts, estates, guardianships, conservatorships, okay, all of that type of stuff. Who's in charge of the account, right? Because the first contractual basis that you have with the United States is a financial account. So before we even get to administrative or statutory law, right? What they call statutory law, statutes and codes, right? Before we even get to all that, we got to deal with the issue of custody, custodianship. Now, what's happening, the reason why the Constitution doesn't exist anymore is because they're overriding your rights with their custodianship, right? The Uniform Transfers to Minors Act is a part of the Uniform Probate Code, which, like the Uniform Commercial Code, is uniform and it is adopted uniformly by the 50 states, right? The Uniform Transfers to Minors Act is a state law that allows adults to transfer various assets, including cash, securities, real estate, royalties, patents, and collectibles, to minors through a custodial account.
It's not on the screen if you're attempting to show it to her.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. I definitely was attempting to show. Okay. Y'all can see that now, right?
Right.
Okay. So the Uniform Transfers to Minors Act is a state law that allows adults to transfer various assets, including cash, securities, real estate, royalties, patents, and collectibles. Okay, so those benefits you received at birth, your Social Security fund, right? You get old age benefits, right? With Social Security, you get low income benefits, right? You can sign up for HUD, you can sign up for SNAP, you can sign up for Cash Aid. They got WIC, right? We got tax credit programs, right? All of these programs that the government offers are processed through the Social Security account, right? And that is assigned to you at birth, right? So at birth, you are assigned a financial account, and that because you are not, you're a minor, you can't have custody over that, and your mom is not an attorney, right? The court system is only going to appoint an attorney to manage an account like this, right? And another part of the reason why we're being overridden in court or in any of these situations is because we're not of testamentary capacity, right? Everybody knows that if when you go sign a will or a power of attorney, you have to be in your right mind, right? So if you're not in your right mind, you can't legally enter into a contract. So because we don't have a full body understanding of what's really going on with this so-called straw man, this is the reason why you're being overridden. You're being forbidden from contracting because you're not competent enough to contract. Now, to get past that, you don't have to learn all the ins and outs of their system. You just have to know your position in this system. So let me move on before I start talking too much, which I've already done. All right. So is a state law that allows adults to transfer various assets, right, to minors through a custodial account. So those Social Security benefits were transferred to you through a custodial account, and that's why that lady as custodian is written on my birth certificate. Okay, in modern day birth certificates, more, if they take that off because we start to find stuff out, they start hiding stuff, right? It's the registrar, right? So everything, a registry is a list. Everything that's registered with the government is under their jurisdiction, right? And the registrar, the lady or man who signs, right? The registrar, I have a hard time saying that word, is the custodian of all the documents received by the court or by the city tax, deed holder or whatever. The registrar is the custodian of those documents, right? So that's how that works. So what we're dealing with is an estate, right? When we get into probate law, we're dealing with an estate. An estate, the word estate means a collection of all of your things, a collection of all of your belongings. Your house is part of your estate. Your shoes is part of your estate. Your iPod is part of your estate. Now, maybe those are not high value items that the state cares about and wants you to register, like a house or a car, but all those things are part of your estate, right? That's just a word that means everything I own. That's my estate, right? So your estate as an entity collectively itself is being held in a trust fund, which is the Social Security number. Social Security is the trust fund, right? So your estate, everything you own is held in this trust fund, right? And the state is acting as the trustee, the custodian, the fiduciary, right? So in order to deal with them on an equitable basis, you have to find the equity in the contract, right? You have to find the equity in the contract, and you have to assert that yourself. And you have to be of some amount of testamentary capacity, meaning that you understand what's going on here, for them to accept your demands. Because legally, they can turn you down if you are not competent to contract. So what I was speaking on my post is what's known as subrogation. To subrogate is just a fancy word for substitute, which means to, we know what substitute means, right? To switch out one for another.
Hello, what happened? Cameron,
Yeah, I'm still here.
she left.
She probably
Right.
it probably kicked out. She probably gonna jump back on. She probably having just some technical difficulties.
So how long you been on this path, Cameron?
I've been on this path probably about just the law aspect of it, probably about 5 or 6 years, man.
Really?
Yeah.
So what have you had any success with any remedy?
And no, I haven't really been doing any remedies because the remedies all over the place. Like she's saying here, we being dishonorable about not allowing them to have jurisdiction, and that's
I've been
what
on
we
this.
get.
I've been on this for 3 years, and I've been like going in circles, getting in the
Yeah,
rabbit hole, going in circles,
yeah,
listening to
and
one person, another person, another person. I'm still getting in circles. And they want
yeah,
all kinds of money, but
yeah,
can't show proof of anything.
yeah,
They
and
want to get
that's
classes and
uh-huh.
consultations, and they
And
don't have proof of anything.
right. And see, I like how she's breaking this down. Now I got a better understanding of the who, the what, and the whys of a lot of this stuff. And without history of why we in these circumstances, you're not gonna know a whole lot about getting a real remedy if you don't know the history and why. But like she's saying now, you got to be able to find the equity in the contract, and that's how you hold them accountable. Because if you have these unlimited credits, which we do have, now it's the thing of getting them to honor them. Because if we have the limited credits, we can pay the light bill, the gas bill, the cell phone bill, the mortgage, the car note. We can pay those things with those unlimited credits, but we also have to put ourselves in a position to show competency on how we go about doing these things. And I believe that's where she at now with finding the equity and showing the competency that you know why you in this situation and you know about the contract that got you here.
Because I'm dealing with a lot of money, and I'm dealing with student loans.
Man, we all are, man. We all are in the same boat. It's been a system designed because they make money off our debts, by us being in debt and working and having these jobs. That's how they are able to stay on top. I don't know. Let me see if I can inbox her and let her know that the recording and stuff.
Her phone might have died.
Yeah.
Because I know I spoke to her one time before, and her phone just died. I spoke to her like a month ago or something like that. So,
okay, I put a message her now. Are we the only two still on here?
Yep. It's still recording, so.
Yeah, I just sent her a message. Soon she said something about equity. That's when it went off. Yeah, she said she see. Give her a minute.
Do y'all hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. My bad. That was crazy, y'all. I don't know how long I've been talking to myself. Hopefully not too long.
No, you went to it cut off after you went to equity. You said subrogation is substitute.
Right.
Yeah. So as you said, finding equity in the contract and talking about subrogation, that's where it went off at.
Okay. So did I give y'all the y'all heard the car crash example that I had?
No.
No? Okay. So I got in a car accident when I was like 19. And my mom had insurance, but her policy didn't cover me, right? So I didn't know that. I was driving. Really, like physically, it was his fault, but legally it was mine because I was uninsured, right? Because the policy didn't cover me. So his insurance covered his damages to his car. And then they turn around and they came after me and they tried to sue me for $4,000, right? Because again, subrogation is a right, right? Which a principal, an insurer that has paid a loss under a policy is entitled to all the rights and remedies belonging to the insured against a third party, right? So that man that I hit could have sued me himself, right? Because I caused him harm with my negligence, right? By not reading that policy. So because his insurance paid for it, now the insurer has the right to come and sue me, right? That's what subrogation is. So it's basically substituting one for another. So the insurance is essentially acting as if they are him now because they paid the debt on his behalf. So now they have the right to come after me for damages as if they are him, right? So they sue me for $4,000. I don't have $4,000. What happens is the state ends up suspending my license. Why did they do that? Because the driver's license in itself is a bond. The driver's license in itself is the last bond that the state has, right? That's why you're supposed to have your own insurance on top of that, because the state don't want to have to pay for shit. That's the whole point of the situation, right? Is this system was created, especially 1933, the bankruptcy, all this other stuff, right? Well, it was sold to the public as something that was created so that people who could not take care of themselves could be taken care of, right? So
Right.
the state don't want to have to pay for nothing. So that's why you're supposed to have insurance, right? So when you can't pay for your own thing, then that's why they come against you and they suspend your license, because the license in itself is a bond through your straw man account, right? So if they can't get nothing else, they're gonna at least come in and suspend your license, and that way they can go in and collect that revenue from that period of time that you were supposed to have the license available to you, right? So basically, what you want to do when we talk about status correction, what people are really talking about is one of two things, or a couple different things, two different things. One, you don't want the straw man to own anything, right? The straw man is a creation of the government, that those terms of that trust contract are set in stone, right? For as long as you're going to use the birth certificate and the social security card and the number and reap the benefits thereof, you are going to have to deal with statutes and codes and administrative law, period, point blank. So you don't want the straw man to own anything, right? You want to move
Right.
everything into a trust so that the trust owns everything. If you guys have ever heard the terminology, people say own, what do they say? Own nothing, control everything, right? So if they
Right.
have all the control in the world over you, well, you want to be able to say, well, I don't own nothing though. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I don't have anything for you to levy, right? For you to tax. Okay. And then what a trust also does is that now you're dealing with them from a commercial capacity rather than an individual one, a representative capacity. So you're not John Doe, living man anymore. You're John Doe, trustee of the Doe Family Trust, or John Doe, sole proprietor of Happy Days Plumbing, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you have another entity. You're basically going to use another entity as a shield, and you're going to stick him in between the real you, or the so-called straw man, right, and the system, and he's going to absorb all the damage. So if you get a traffic ticket, they say you owe $500, you got a trust, you can draw off the trust and put the trust in debt, and now the straw man can be released.
Right.
But you sit there and said put the trust in debt. So how does the trust pay the debt?
How does
You
the
say
trust pay the
Yeah,
debt?
you say you want, so the trust is going to acquire the debt from the strong man. Okay. So
Mhm.
now he's taking the debt. So how does the trust settle the debt?
Well, the trust settles the debt because as the owner of an entity, right? If you're a business owner, you can order that entity into debt. So you can write a note, a promissory note, right? So let's say I own JoJo's plumbing service, right? So I can write a promissory note, and I can say, hey, JoJo's plumbing service is going to pay this debt, right? So for $500. So say I get a $500 ticket, I'm going to say I'm going to write that off on JoJo's plumbing service, right? So here's the thing. Let me show you guys. Where am I at? Oh, here. So under right is it Federal Reserve? Under the Federal Reserve Circular, promissory notes are equivalent to dollars. Promissory notes are equivalent to dollars. Federal Reserve notes. I hope this isn't a big long thing. It's in here somewhere though. All right, so promissory notes are equivalent to Federal Reserve notes. So that's what we're not understanding, right? Is that we think we have to pay with green dollars or with banking credits, right? And we don't understand that the promissory note is the same thing as green dollars, right? Because what they're doing is they're taking that note and they're doing something at the bank called discounting. Right? So they're selling the note to the Federal Reserve Bank through something called the discount window, the Federal Reserve discount window. Right? So you might think you're giving them nothing, but what you're doing when you write a promissory note, a bill of exchange, what you're giving is drawing rights. That's the value that you're giving. We have to remember intellectual property is property. Right? If you write a song, that's your property. So we can't think that property is only like physical, tangible things. Property is also intellectual, right? So your subscription is like a trademark. It's your property, right? So when you have another entity and you draw up a $500 promissory note on that entity's head and you give it to somebody else, what you're selling, the value that is being given that you think is nothing, is drawing rights up to $500. Right? So when the trust comes through and the trust pays that, when the trust comes through and the trust pays that, that's what you're assigning, right? So it's just like say if you had we got to stop thinking of this idea that we can only pay debt with money. You can if you don't have money, you have labor, you have intellectual property. You know what I mean? All these things can be commercialized, right? Monetized. Work contracts can be monetized, right? Trademarks can be monetized, right? So that's what you're giving when you give over a note, is you're giving drawing rights on your estate, drawing rights on your account. So if you have a trust, you catch a ticket, right? You have your trust pay the ticket. You just pay them with the promissory note. I'm going to give you $500 worth of drawing rights on this trust. And the reason why you want a trust, or at the very least a sole proprietorship, is because what you have to understand, especially now, what they're going to do is they're going to start cracking down, because what's going on right now is the bankruptcy cycle is coming to a close again, right? That's why all this financial pullback, right? The bankruptcy cycle is coming to a close again. So what they're going to stop doing, they're going to stop being so lax about letting you zero out the ledger, right? They're going to start enforcing the treaty again, which means, hey, you're supposed to credit the United States. You're supposed to credit. You're supposed to credit. That's what the treaty says. Right now, it's tricky because slavery and involuntary servitude are a crime. And that's where it gets tricky at, right? So say they hit you with an administrative charge. Let's say they hit you with driving without a license, right? Well, who's the injured party on driving without a license? Well, there isn't one, right? So that's an administrative, or what they call statutory charge, right? I said I was going to teach you how to speak legalese. So if you're talking about statutes and codes, commercial crimes, non-real, whatever term you've been taught to address that as, right? The proper term that you're looking for is administrative. Or non-violent. You'll hear, politicians and lawmakers use non-violent crime. But you're talking about administrative crimes, administrative law, versus constitutional crimes or constitutional law. And that would be your private and public, right? So public would be administrative, private would be constitutional. I think I'm kind of losing where I'm going a little bit. Anybody got any questions or something they want to say to kind of help pull me back on track here?
I really don't know exactly where you was going, but you was talking about the difference when you're dealing with certain entities. You're dealing with commercial. I mean, with statutory and administrative. You were saying that anything statutory and administrative or straw man related.
So
You did
proprietorship.
proprietorship.
Yeah,
You're dealing with
proprietorship.
administrative law.
Right. Right. So that's what you're dealing with. So, like I said, you want to deal with them, right? So we've been here in the sovereign community. I'm not doing commerce. I'm not engaged in commerce. I'm not engaged in commerce, right?
Right.
You are engaged in commerce. As far as they're talking about this whole theory we've been taught of, like, oh, we got to be private. We got to be no. It's not really how you handle the situation. They're not going to recognize you as private, especially not when you're operating under the straw man name. Now,
Right.
as a straw man, you're still a private citizen, right? You're just, so it's the sole proprietorship. Okay, well, who's the owner of the sole proprietorship? The sole proprietorship still has an owner who's still a private citizen of the United States, right? So you still have access to equity. You just don't know how to apply it, right? Because again, there's a capacity thing going on where you're not quite understanding what's really going on. But you want to deal with them in a commercial capacity, because everything is commerce. I mean, it's just like what they say with legalese. They've taken basic words and they've redefined them, right? So like the word person doesn't mean what we think it means, right? Corporations have been granted personhood, meaning that corporate entities, bodies can be called persons, right? So we didn't quite realize that at first. So we were confused about what person means. Well, commerce is the same way. The Constitution defines driving as commerce. You know what I mean? That's where they get the authority to demand registration. You know what I mean? So if you want to talk about traveling privately, you know, there's misunderstandings with that too. A lot of this stuff is just being completely misunderstood by people, and people are just doing a lot of things wrong and getting in a lot of trouble. But I'm trying to help, you know, bring some of that back in. But yeah, so you want to deal with them in a commercial capacity, because they're never going to recognize this private living man. It's just never going to happen. You want to deal with them in a commercial capacity rather than in an individual one, because an individual he has full liability. You know what I mean? He has nothing to cover his ass. Now, if you're dealing from the position of being a trustee or some type of director or owner of another business or entity, well, then you could have provisions. You might have something in your trust where the trustee is indemnified from harm, right? Up to, $1 million, right? So then you've created a fund, set aside a fund of credit that you can use when charges come against a straw man. You can say, well, the straw man works for the trust and the trust has indemnified him, and here's the fund of credit that I've set aside. So now you got something, like I said, to throw out there in front of you that they can eat and suck the lifeblood out of, instead of eating and sucking the lifeblood out of you. And that
Correct.
process, like I called, is that substitution, subrogation, to swap out one for another, right? So that idea, that process is the whole key of what this entire process is. Whether you're dealing with cases, debts, wanting to acquire new assets, purchase new assets with securities or anything like that, we're dealing with the issue of, we need to get this guy out of there and put this guy in there. Or even when dealing from the perspective of the straw man, you can come with more equity when you're dealing with cases and stuff like that. But the thing you have to do is you got to pull yourself off of that bond. So they got this thing called relief of surety, right? I'm about to stop yapping after a minute, and I'm about to give y'all a chance to ask any questions. We're about to wrap up here in a second.
You're doing
But
well.
so thank you. So any contract, according to the CFR, any contract that has a maturity period of longer than 9 months is a security, right? And like I said, your name is a sole proprietorship. So the sole proprietorship, the business, you in a commercial capacity, is the entity that's in commerce, right? And then you in your personal capacity is the entity that's standing as surety for this commercial transaction, right? Now, like I said, the reason why this gets tricky with the treaty says you have to pay, you have to credit them, but involuntary servitude and slavery are crimes, right? So it's a sticky line here, the way they had to write it to give you just a little window to have due process, or what's in commercial law is called equity, right? Due process and equity is essentially the same thing. They had to leave a little loophole to get around the fact that they essentially just obliterated the entire Constitution. So what you want to do is you want to relieve yourself of as surety. So you have all these contracts, you have like court cases. This is how I beat a case, right? They're trying to hit me with some administrative stuff, right? Well, you're trying to say I injured someone. I didn't injure anybody. I was injured. That's what really happened, right? So now you're trying to hit me with some administrative stuff, and you're trying to force me in my personal capacity to stand as surety for an administrative charge. That's called involuntary servitude, right? You don't have an injured party. Servitude can only be used as punishment for a crime. For a crime. There has to be an injured party to enslave somebody, right? Because the idea that enslavement, I get to overpower you, I get to override you, right? That's essentially how, the only way you can really even throw somebody in jail, right? You have to have the ability to override their authority, right? Because obviously no one's going to go to jail voluntarily.
Right.
Right. So incarceration in itself is a form of servitude, right? But if they're incarcerating you without cause and without due process, that they're not allowed to do, right? So that's where it gets tricky, and that's where this system of crediting comes in, where you create this trust, and if you throw that entity out there in front of the straw man, and because of your ability to do that, that's why they get to call this so-called legal. Because you have a way around it where you can discharge the obligation and you can, without losing your personal liberty. You just don't know how to do it. And they don't have any sympathy for you. Right? So relief of surety. So any contract that you're standing on in more than 9 months is a security, right? Unless you have harmed somebody, you don't have to do this. You can pull out of every contract. Right? Nobody can force you to work. You can pull out of any contract you want to. So what you do under 27 CFR, you send a notice of relief of surety. So when you pull yourself out of that contract, you say, I'm not going to use my estate, my straw man, to secure this debt anymore, right? So what's going to happen is, the thing is, when you pull out of a contract, if I call my boss and tell him I'm not coming to work tomorrow, what's going to happen? Well, I'm not getting paid next week. Right? So, and this is another thing that people are screwing up too, is they're trying to pull out of contracts without replacing the obligation. You can't do that. That's called stealing. Right? So if I worked already, you have to pay me. You can't pull out of the contract, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to keep the benefits of the contract without giving up the obligation. The benefit was you got my labor. Now your obligation is you have to pay me. If you do not pay me, that's the theft of equity. That's a true crime, right? So what some people are trying to do is they're trying to pull out of their debts without issuing another instrument to replace the note they're canceling. And then what happens when you do that is you lose rights over the contract, right? So any contract you want to get out of, a mortgage, a court case, if there's no injured party, a car note, whatever, right? You relieve yourself as surety on the contract, on the bond, and what happened is that bond, what they call in financial terms, it extinguishes itself. So it becomes empty. If what's funding this account is a monetized promise to pay, is a promise worth a goddamn thing? A promise ain't worth jack. Your labor only becomes valuable if you actually do it, right? So the second you stop performing on that contract, say you stop paying the car note, right? you lose the rights over the contract. So now you can't keep the car. Nobody can force you to pay the note. Servitude is a crime, right? But you can't keep the car. That's not how life works. Right? So that's what people are doing, and they're getting their shit repoed and all kind of crazy shit because they don't understand. You have to say, give me that bond back and take this one instead. Because now when I take this one, it's the same thing in a court case when you do a plea agreement. A plea agreement is you saying, give me that bond back and take this one instead. Right? So that's subrogation. That's what you have to do, because now you can control the terms of the agreement, right? What they charged me with, I said, you don't have any evidence, you don't have an injured party, there's no way you're running that past the jury, give it up. It's not happening. So my attorney came to me, he said, you're my public defender, right? See, when you know things, your the defender can act like Johnny Cochran for real. He just doesn't want to. He just doesn't want to because he doesn't have to, and you don't know what to do about it. You don't know how to hold him accountable. Okay. This shit is a game to them for real. Right. And they're gonna make money, right? And another thing, if y'all didn't know, the American Bar Association has their own constitution. These sororities and the Freemason Society, they have their own constitution. All these companies, they're all doing the same thing. These nonprofits, they're constituting. Right? So you think a constitution is something special. Alpha sorority got a damn constitution. So when you go in the courtroom, are they working for the court or are they working for you? They work for the court. In the American Bar Association Constitution, the American Bar Association works for the United States. So is there truly a such thing as a private attorney? Not at all. No, there's not. No, there's not at all. Exactly. So when you catch a case and you understand, why are you trying to override the Constitution, bro? Well, it's because he's not judging this case according to the American Constitution. Print off a copy. Go Google now. Print off a copy. American Bar Association Constitution. And next time you catch a small little petty traffic ticket, go in there and say, which Constitution are you judging this case according to? This one or this one? Watch their thoughts. Yeah. Right. So that's all we're doing is we're taking out one and we're putting in another. But you have to replace the bond so that you don't lose rights over the contract. When you don't perform on that, when you renege on that contract and you don't perform, you lose rights over the contract. It's the same thing, like kind of how bail works, right? When you get a summons works like a bail bond. When you get a summons, you're being extended credit on your name, good faith, right? Right. That you will show up. So what happens when you get bailed out of jail and the bail bondsman puts up the $10,000 and says Johnny Dove will be on court on Friday, and then you don't go to court? They got to subrogate themselves for you. Right. Exactly. They got to subrogate themselves for you. So now they got to pay. So that then the second they come pay, well, they had to pay on the claim, just like the insurance guy when I got in the accident had to pay on the claim. So now they're going to come get you to make up for it. Well, now you got to pay. Well, I had to pay, so now you got to pay. Right? So when they bail you, when they bond you out of jail, there's a contract there. I said I'd put up $10,000, and you said you would go to court, but you didn't go to court. You didn't keep up your end of the contract, so you just lost rights over the bond. And that's why they're coming to arrest you again. It's all about money. Yeah. So it's the same thing with a summons. When you don't go, you lose rights over the bond. And when you lose rights over the bond, now it can be enforced against you. All right, go ahead, y'all. Let me stop rambling. Go ahead.
No, you ain't rambling. You're doing a great job. You making it plain so it can be understood. See, that's the problem. Everybody is just running around like they chicken with their head cut off. They hear this word, they hear that word, and they don't never really have a true foundation on how this stuff works. Because I've been in this stuff for a minute, but I never heard it explained like you explained it. Now I got such a better understanding because jurisdiction is a big question. Everybody's hollering, "Oh, they don't have jurisdiction over the living man." Well, come to find out, you don't supposed to be up in there acting as the living man. You supposed to have a buffer in between you and the straw man. I mean,
Right,
and the living man. If you don't, then the living
right,
man is held accountable. He got to go to work. He got to do X, Y, and Z to
right,
perform. So
right.
the way you broke it down, the way you putting it out there is phenomenal to me. And I've been studying this stuff for a minute.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. That's what I'm trying to do is bring it broken down so in regular English so everybody can understand like what the hell's
Everybody
going
can
on.
understand. Right.
There's a lot of people that are getting in a lot of trouble doing a lot of crazy shit because they don't understand and they're like this is these agreements with this money and Britain this is not a game. And
No,
those
it's
people are
not.
not playing about their money and people are getting dragged out their cars and it's just it's a lot. So
It's a lot. And people are just they listening to everybody, but the way you breaking this down and stuff, can't nobody go wrong listening to how you breaking it down. Of course, you providing references to back up everything you saying. So I you done a phenomenal job. I can listen to you for another hour.
thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm glad you're getting it. I'm glad you're getting it. I've
I'm
uh
getting it.
I've presented it this way a few times now and I've had people give me some positive feedback. So that makes me feel good.
Yep.
So do y'all have any questions you want to ask real quick or I have a few more things I could say, but I'm about done.
Okay. Well, mm, I guess I don't have a lot of questions because how you explain it, I've heard the same stuff about, paying for stuff with promissory notes and things of that nature, but people are not telling you that when you um renege on a contract or bag out of a contract, it has to be replaced with something. And that's how
Right.
you perform. You perform by giving them another instrument. Now, now the thing is getting them to accept that instrument, and that's why we got to know why they have to accept it, referring to the peace treaty, the peace treaty, and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, also quoting that 27 CFR, letting them
Relationship.
know
Uh
that
huh.
hey, this is a contract longer than 9 months. This is being secured through my social security account. It has to be because the Securities and Exchange Act says so,
Right.
you know.
Uh huh.
And then you want to go ahead. There's a thing called notary presentment.
Uh
So a
huh.
notary is technically a judicial officer. A notary is an officer of the court, right?
Hmm. Right.
So when you can send, there's a service they do called presentment. So basically, it's like private court.
Hmm.
And what you do is you take your documents down to the notary and you sign them in front of the notary and you surrender the documents over to the notary. So she's almost acting like the clerk of court. You
Hmm.
surrender the documents to the notary, she notarizes them, and she sends them off on your behalf. So they know there's no tampering here, right? Nobody's
Hmm.
tampering with evidence. She's overseeing the entire administration on a private level,
Right. Hmm.
right? So then in response, when they respond to you, they have to respond back to the notary. Then the notary gives you a call. Hey, they responded. Come down here with your paperwork, notarize that and send it back. So the whole thing goes through the notary so everybody knows what happened on and for the record, right?
Right.
So once you get your claim in place, you got all your laws, all your codes, your documentation drawn up. This is why I have the authority to do this because that's definitely true. Is people are not being taught enforcement either. And
Right.
enforcement is the most important part because they really, especially when you're like a regular person like me,
Right.
like you know what I mean? They
Uh-huh.
don't believe you know what you're talking
You
about until you
talking about right? They not
right.
go. They don't want to honor it.
Right. You have
Yeah.
to prove you know what you're talking about. You have to
Talking about.
prove that
Uh
there are
huh.
going to be consequences and there are going to be you know how to hold them accountable when they deny you. Until sometimes you get a nice one or a soft one who's just scared. I tell people that too, is that they're like regular people. Some of them are bold, some of them are not. Some of them are real
Right.
scary and back down easy. Some of them don't. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Uh-huh.
But until
Uh-huh.
you got to be taught that enforcement. So you get all your statutes and stuff together. This is my authority. This is that spelled out, to a T, which I can help with. You know what I mean? And then you send that notice of presentment, and once you get that back, either you get an admission, hey, I'm going to pay you, or you get dishonor. Right? They don't
Right.
respond.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Uh-huh.
So the same way when you get someone to court and you don't show up, what does the judge do? He rules in the plaintiff's favor
Uh-huh.
based
That's
on
true.
you dishonor the court. So you lose by default when you dishonor the court.
Uh-huh.
Right?
Declaratory judgment. Yeah.
So then you got that, and you got that already countersigned by a judicial officer. You just take that down to the courthouse and have them stamp it, judge, and it's done. You know what I mean? So a lot of times
Uh-huh.
when you want to get at somebody for real, you got to get that enforcement. Once they start seeing some tax forms and some notary presentments, they start, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And another trick that my mom does too. My mom's paid for probably 3 minor car accidents now with the promissory note. And what she likes to do too, because of the way that the discounting at the bank works, the banking, the way they deposit it and then turn around and make money off of it. She
Uh-huh.
likes to make the note for about 3 times as much as whatever the actual obligation is.
Okay.
Because basically what they do, you take the note down the bank, say you take a note for $500. They do this thing called they discount it. So they're going to buy it from you at a discount. Say you take $500 down, they might give you $485, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what these corporations are doing is they take that $485 and they put it in an interest-bearing account.
Okay.
Right? So
Right.
then as that account bears interest, the interest is what pays the bill.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you can do the same thing. And if you do it properly, even on the, well, I won't say properly, because anything you put on the UCC registry, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a private debt has to be recorded on the UCC registry. Once you put it on the UCC registry, it becomes a public asset. Is right. It's publicly recorded. But that's a general principle with the laws, public notice, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like when you file a DBA, you have to put that in the newspaper for a few weeks, right?
Uh-huh.
So everything, a lot of stuff is just the mandate for public notice. So a lot of people don't record their notes; they don't UCC them, so they're not on the public registry. So that's why they're not being taken. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So enforcement is important, but yeah, all that stuff is good too. So traffic tickets, I've gotten rid of like 3 traffic tickets. I beat a case. What else have I done? I almost was able to secure a piece of land, but I wasn't quite versed enough yet at the time when that happened to secure that. I got a bail bond for a lady at $10,000, reduced down to $10. And in addition to myself, I also got another guy out of jail. He was looking about maybe 5 years on like some, I think it was ecstasy charges or something like that. So I've had some pretty good successes,
Yeah.
Yeah. That's all it's about, is that substitution. That's the master key right there. Once you understand the nature of the trust and the substitution, yeah, you're living a whole different life.
So I'm the one that had to put out a warrant for me or what have you, and now they trying to garnish my check. I was thinking about calling down there, asking for the bonds and stuff, kind of ruffle their feathers a little bit, and see if that'll work, because I know it got some standard form bonds and things, being if they don't put out a warrant that they can use instead of garnishing my paycheck. But
what are they garnishing your paycheck for, if you don't mind me asking?
A warrant? I got a warrant out for some old traffic tickets that I didn't pay.
So you had a bench warrant, and because you never turned in, they garnish your paycheck?
Right. They garnishing. That's a new thing that they're doing. I'm surprised that they're doing it, because I'd never had them done it before. Of course, it's not my first warrant, but
Mhm.
they going to desperate measures now. You know, they going some paychecks now. So I see
Right.
that's a new thing they doing.
Mhm.
And it's my fault because I didn't respond to them. You know, I took it for granted that, you know, that they weren't gonna do nothing. Like they don't normally do nothing, and you know they normally catch up with me, and I normally end up paying a whole big lump sum. But you know, I kind of want to go ahead and get this thing dealt with because they don't suspended my license, and although I know I don't need license to drive, but that's still a contract that I got leaning over my head, and you know until I get um things set up like they supposed to be set up, you know, it's just a bullet I'm gonna have to bite for right now.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Well, you do have options there. You would need to set up a trust. And
Uh-huh.
then the court will take the court. They get fucking weird about private securities. And
Uh-huh.
I was gonna touch on that earlier too. Is that with the change in the presidential administration, they're gonna get a little bit stricter about trying to credit from the straw man account, right?
Uh-huh.
Because what you got to understand is they already own that account.
Right.
You know what I mean? So you trying to
Yeah.
give them something out of that account is like a joke. Like, bitch, we already own your whole life. What are you talking about?
Yeah, yeah, I already know. You know, I already know how dealing with them and how stubborn they can be. You know, fucking with them is either all right or all wrong. You know, if they see any
Right,
little loophole, they gonna use that
right.
loophole. So I'm just gonna continue. You know, you said you got this society coming up. I really like how you breaking down things. You know, I'm in a hurry to get some stuff going, but I'm not in a hurry. So I'm gonna fuck with you, JoJo. You know what I'm saying? Whatever you got going on, I'm gonna fuck with you. I like how you breaking things down, and I'm not in no hurry. I'm still a young man, so I still feel like I got time to get everything situated and still be able to sit down and enjoy the rest of my life because I know it's some light at the end of the tunnel.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a good mentality to have.
Oh yeah.
It's good, but you got to, right? Because
Oh,
otherwise,
you
once
got to. I ain't finna rush nothing. You know, I ain't finna
right,
rush it. I've been studying this stuff for a minute, and you bring a lot of clarity to some things, and just by listening to you, I know a lot of this stuff that's people telling us that we gotta have done ain't got to be done. So I'm just gonna hang around and stick around and mess with you for a minute
okay,
and chill out.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Well, what I will say is turning private securities into public securities is essentially what I'm working on learning how to do now.
Uh-huh.
That's what I want to do with my organization. You know what I mean? Um,
Right.
that would basically be what you would have to do, to deal with that situation. Is you need to create some public money. So that's essentially like the last little step I'm trying to work on to make sure I can cross all my I's and dot all my T's. My organization is going to be like a trust organization,
Uh-huh.
so people can sign up for free. Everything is going to be, no down payment, should I say. It's not going to be a nonprofit. It's going to be a for-profit, but
Mm-hmm.
everything's going to be paid for the way they do it, by the returns. You know what I mean?
Right. Uh-huh.
Um, and so I want to make sure I have my bylaws really tight because that's going to be the structure of the trust. You know what I mean? So I've been attending like some conferences from some attorneys and learning about probate, and I have to jump in and really make sure I'm studying all this stuff because
Mm-hmm.
when I'm done, I'm planning on, I'm gonna start looking to find a bank to work with, and I have to go in there myself, and I
Right.
have to pitch this myself. You know what I
Uh-huh.
mean? In a system full of sharks that are designed to eat me.
Right. And you got to
I have to
know
know exactly what the hell I'm talking about. You know what I mean?
you got to speak their language, you know,
Right, right, right.
you
So
just
I'm
another one of
excited
them.
and I'm frustrated, but it don't mean nothing if you don't do it right. I've learned that. So
Uh-huh. Yeah. It's
that's
either
my
all
goal
right or
with
all
this.
wrong.
Why I do teach people for free because I'm hoping that once I get my shit right, everybody come back to me out of appreciation or just even if they don't, I like helping
Uh-huh.
people. I like teaching people, and I know that Nobody's really breaking this down in plain English from start to finish, like explain
No.
this, explain that. I know how much effort it took me to learn this shit. And I
Right.
know that I just happen to have the gift of the gab like that for real. Like, when I was a kid, my grandmother made me read the dictionary and the encyclopedia. It's almost like she knew I was going to be doing this or something. It was weird.
Right.
But that's a big part of the reason. Like, if she would have never done that, I don't even think I would have the capacity to even grasp this information. You know what I mean? Like, it's impossible.
Yeah.
And they make
Yeah.
it that way on purpose. So I just
Uh-huh.
am really excited about being able to condense it and break it down in plain English, because I've like I said, this is about the third time I presented it this way now, and I've definitely heard that before, that I've helped people reach a different level of enlightenment. Like, whoa, I've never heard it like this. You know what I mean? And
Uh-huh.
that's the level of understanding you really got to have to get results.
Well, and another thing too, you have to know it in order to even be able to break it down to give that type of understanding. So I can tell you know your stuff. You have read the history, and you know why we in this situation, how we got in this situation. A lot of people teaching about trust and equity and things of that nature don't even know the history of why we even in this mess.
Right.
And that's where it comes. That's where it started.
Right.
Yeah. And you the first person I ever heard say anything about allowing them to have jurisdiction, because that's the big no.
Right.
Don't give
That's
them
what everybody
jurisdiction.
tells you,
But
here's the thing, right? Is that you got to understand it's a sticky situation, because slavery and servitude is illegal, right?
right. Mm-hmm.
But what we have to understand is the treaty comes before the Constitution.
Right. And the
Treaty
treaty
precedes the Constitution.
it gives them that jurisdiction. And when
Right.
we don't allow them to have jurisdiction,
Exactly.
it voids the contract, and everything else we're talking about is really irrelevant.
Right.
Once you don't allow them the jurisdiction, they don't have to honor any word or anything that's coming out of your mouth, and that's kind of how they act too.
Right.
So a lot of people teaching this stuff don't even know about the contract they in with the peace treaty. So that's another thing. People just there's a lot of people just running off at the mouth, selling packages that don't know what's going on.
That's a fact. And it's just, man, I normally don't knock a hustle, but
It's a hustle. It's a hustle.
This is too big to be played with. You feel me? Like,
Yeah.
y'all hustling people out of their freedom for real, and that's not okay.
Right. It's so many people getting a car, cars repossessed, houses foreclosed on, lights cut off, all because they listen to people that's telling them they don't have to pay. They don't
Right.
have to pay, but not showing them how to not have to pay. That shit sound good. Like this guy that's in here now, he say he been studying this stuff for 3 years. I'm pretty sure he heard some guys saying you don't supposed to pay this. You ain't got to do this and do that. That's the trick. That's how I get everyone. But there ain't nobody giving no solid foundation on how you get yourself in the position where you don't have to pay by creating instruments, putting yourself in a position to create instruments that these people respect and honor.
Right.
Yeah.
And they're not telling you about the treaty. Go ahead.
No. They talking about the Morris Treaty, the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, or Marrakesh, or whatever. They not talking about the one that the contract between Great Britain and the United States is what this is about.
Right. So and I just want to show this real quick too. So we talk about the public debt clause in the section 4 of the 14th Amendment, right? So the validity of the public debt of the United States is authorized by law, including debts incurred for payment of pensions and bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion, right? So when we refuse to credit the United States, we are in an act of insurrection.
Right.
We are in an act of rebellion, right? So it says the validity of the public debt as authorized by law shall not be questioned. Like, y'all sitting here, I'm not going to pay. This is why they're calling you a terrorist, because you have no idea what the foundation of what happened is. This country was established by the money of the people you're paying taxes to, and you're trying to tell them you're not going to pay?
Right. Yeah.
Are you crazy?
Yeah. And
Y'all
they
stop messing with them people. Stop messing with them people.
And they created a whole system for you to pay with. You know, you just got to give them the credit. They don't give you the money, the credits. You just gotta know how to put yourself in a position to use your own credits.
Right. So that, and it was something else I was gonna say, but yeah, you got to know how to use that on credit. But like I said, they make it, they make it goofy on purpose, so nobody can understand and nobody can, and then the CIA is a lot of all this, these people in these groups, a lot is CONTELPRO, it's all, and I started learning because when I first found out about this, my mom came to me, and my mom she's always been like a get rich quick scheme type of person, you know what I mean? So when she came to me with this, I was just like, man, this is not real. Like, here she goes with this nonsense again. And she brought me her birth certificate, and she flipped it over and she put it under the light, and it said American Banknote Company. And she kept saying, it's a bond, it's worth $1 million in Social Security. And I was like, what the hell is she talking? I said, I don't even know what a bond is for real, but I know it's got something to do with money and investments, and like people buy them and then somehow they worth more money later. And I said, well, if this ain't got something to do with banking, then why is it written on banknote paper? So I just started researching, and me right off the bat, I just kind of had the instinct of like, I can't be out here just listening to anything everybody got to say. Y'all just told me the government of the United States was lying. Right. And I'm supposed to believe these random up on the internet? Like, that's crazy. That's crazy. Why would I do that? Like, you know what I'm saying? That don't make no type of sense. So everything that I looked up, I had to be sure. And I'm going to throw this on here too, just so it's in the video so people can see it. SEDM.org. It's like Sovereign Defense Ministries or something. They've got a PDF on here. At least they used to. Let's see if it's still. It's called Proof the Straw Man is Real. And they went through and combed through all the laws, and they show you all the codes. You know what I mean? Because I feel like that's important. You got to see these laws and these codes for yourself. Because you're dealing with these people, they are trained to intimidate you. Right. They are trained to be an asshole. They are trained to deny the truth. They are trained to do all of that. And if you don't know for sure within yourself that you know what you're talking to, it's going to be very easy for them to do that. You know what I mean? Right. Yeah. Yeah. So this is it right here. So if y'all go SEDM.org, you can search it in their taskbar, or just go to Google, type Proof the Straw Man is Real. See this PDF, and it's got he put all the definitions. I don't know how long it took them to write. I mean, this is an amazing act of patriotism for real. Like, you know what I'm saying? This is nuts. But yeah, it's all in there, so that, and yeah, so I knew early on when I was hearing people, I won't call no names, you know what I mean? I'm not for they fuck around sue me for slander. But I knew, that these people are saying that that's not true. And these people are saying that and that's not true either. You know what I mean? So you got to be very careful, very careful. Most of these groups are just full of trolls and nonsense, and they're purposely trying to, we know like from the organization, you know what I mean? They infiltrate. They put out nonsense. They divide, conquer, take it over. They
a lot of it's ego, want to know more than the next person. A lot of ego shit in these groups too. Everybody want to know something. Everybody think they the man. They got the remedy. They ain't got shit.
Yep. And there's also I see a lot of people learn the game and then they turn into one of them other people.
Yeah.
And it really saddens me now. now that I'm starting to learn this system, because I've heard people say all my life, capitalism. I'm like, what the fuck is a capitalism? I don't even know what the hell they're talking about, but they're saying the world is corrupt, and yeah, it feels corrupt to me. It seems like they could do better, but I don't know none of this technical language you're using, but you know what I mean? So now that I'm learning and I'm starting to see, and I'm just like, it really is sad to me how many people learn the game just to become the oppressor.
Just to become the oppressor, you know,
Just to
and they
become the oppressor.
wonder
That's
why.
why a lot of people don't want to tell you stuff, and they want to bark, oh, just study more, just study more. Like, bro, not everybody is a brainiac and not everybody has the time. You know what I mean? I spent 2-3 years of the time I learned this at home taking care of my grandmother when I didn't have a job. You know what I mean? So I had the time.
Person going to work every day, it's gonna take them a minute, you know, and that's been my thing. I'm working every day, you know. I got responsibilities and stuff as a man, so you know, I took some time off. I took a couple years off to just kind of dig down and deep into this stuff, and that's why I learned the most when I wasn't at work, you know, because working don't allow you the time that you need to study for this stuff. So
it doesn't.
I thank the universe for sending people like you and you know some other few people that I know that really try to break down this stuff and give people understanding other than just selling them something.
Yeah, most of. I try. You know, it's just something I'm passionate about, so I try to share.
You're doing a wonderful job. Trust me, you taking it from a guy that's been in a lot of the groups and don't listen to everybody. So you done a wonderful job. It was a wonderful presentation. Um, I learned some things just by sitting here listening, not looking at no remedy, not looking at no paperwork, just looking at the laws and how this stuff designed. I learned a lot and I appreciate
you. Okay. Well, that's what's up. That was the goal. So it was just us tonight, but hopefully I can post this and some other minds will see it. And I appreciate y'all rocking with me, taking the time to come listen. I hope I could be of service, enlighten some, you know, and yeah. What I'm gonna do and what I'm telling everybody. Yeah, most
when you get ready to do something else, keep me posted. I'm in there like swimwear.
Right. I want to be more regular with this, you know, but definitely on the next one, I'll definitely keep you posted. And I appreciate you tuning in.
No doubt.
Thank you, JoJo.
Yeah, most def. Don, did you have anything you want to say? Or are you good? You want to hit me up later?
Yeah, I'd like to hear more later on about what you said about your mom did with the promising note with the car accident. I'd like to hear about that story later on.
Okay. Well, I'll hit you later. We'll set something up.
Okay.
Most stuff. All right, y'all. Well, I'm gonna sign off. Thank you for rocking with me today.
All right. We appreciate you, Joe.
All right. Take care, y'all.
All right. Thanks.